Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Thursday sessions. I always look forward to being here with all of you. I'll give a few minutes for everyone to jump in, but as usual, please let us know where you're coming from, where do you live, your industry, what is something that you're looking forward to in today's presentation. And also, we can do like a quick check-in, like how are you doing? Are you feeling great? Are you good? Are you all right? Are you so? Just kind of let us know how it is that you're doing up until this point. I know I am doing great today. Today is actually my mom's birthday. So, a lot of gratitude and just thankfulness that, I still have my mom with me. And I'm also excited to be here as always. Let's see. Anyone coming in yet? Ooh, what happened here? I don't see any comments yet. All right, can somebody let me know that you're in here? I'm not seeing anything. Oh, there we are. Yes. All right, we're coming in. Yes, please let us know where you're coming from. Here, let me put the little banner that says, let us know where you're joining from, the industry that you're in, and what you're looking forward to learn today. Awesome. I see Vanessa, hola, from North Dakota. Ooh, it's coming in now. San Jose, California, Arizona. I'm actually based in Los Angeles, California. So shout out to my West Coast people, but also love that, people are tuning in from all over the United States, even outside the States. Love the energy and the excitement of you guys being here today. For those of you, if this is your first time ever joining one of my live sessions, welcome. Con mucho amor y cariño, I welcome you to today's workshop. And so typically these workshops or webinars are about 30 minutes in which I will go ahead and talk about a specific topic. Today is one of my favorite topics, which is about healthy relationships. I know I say every time that this is my favorite topic, it's my favorite topic. And actually, because all topics are my favorite, I'm really passionate about educating and talking about all things mental health and healing. So welcome you those that this is your first time. Wow, I'm seeing more people tuning in from Houston, from Dallas, from Chicago, Seattle. Love it. For those of you, if you have been following my journey and been, coming into my sessions, thank you so much for just taking out the time and being here with me. I would love if I can do this session live where I get to actually meet all of you, be in the presence of all of you, and really have more engaging and meaningful conversations. At the same time, though, I'm grateful that I can at least be able to have this platform where virtually we are able to connect from all over. So yeah, let me get the presentation going. I try to start on time just because I actually cover a lot in my sessions, and I want to make sure that I also leave room for any questions at the end. Awesome. And like I mentioned, also if you can let us know how are you doing, are you great? Are you good? Are you so? We want to kind of get a meter of how it is that you're feeling today. So today's topic, we are going to talk about how do we cultivate healthy relationships? How do we improve our communication and boundaries in our personal and also professional lives? So a lot of good stuff today. Ooh, I want to give a shout out to Karina from Guadalajara, Mexico. That is where my family is from. So it's such a pleasure to have you here with us today. Sorry, I just got a little excited there. Okay, so So who am I, right? I'm already like started talking about all these things and I haven't even introduced myself. But again, for those of you that know me, bear with me that I always have to introduce myself. But want to make sure that for those that are new here, that you get a chance to get to know me as I get the chance to get to know you as well. My name is Norma Garcia. I am a first gen Mexican American. I am a licensed clinical social worker and an inner healing coach. I've been practicing and devoting my time to working in the last 10 years in various community agencies supporting underserved communities like the Latino community. So it's one of like my passions to be able to help and give back to my people. In my approach and everything that I do with clients, I definitely, come with an approach of being culturally sensitive, understanding the role of culture, how it plays in our lives. Also, I also operate from a trauma-informed lens where I look at things and where I incorporate also lens of a trauma. I'm very, very passionate about working, supporting, empowering, educating high achieving Latina professionals, women of color, first gens like myself. And it is my ultimate mission to be able to continue advocating on mental health, on breaking generational trauma, and also being able to support you in your healing journey. Alrighty. So I first wanted to start with just some questions to just get us thinking about where we're at in terms of relationships. And we think of relationships, obviously, there's all sorts of relationships, right? So when you are thinking about these questions, you can maybe focus on a specific relationship that you have in mind. You can think of a relationship that perhaps right now you feel could get stronger. These relationships can be obviously, relationships with your family, relationships with like your romantic partner, your relationships at work with your coworkers and bosses. This could be relationships, even like your friendships, acquaintances, situationships, for any of those that are in that. And so I want you to think about, these questions and what comes up for you. Do you feel that you have trust? Where it is that you're thinking about, is there trust? Do you trust that person? Is there trust in the relationship? Is there respect in that relationship? Do you support each other's interests and efforts? Is there honesty and openness with each other? Are you able to, maintain your individual identity? Do you talk about your feelings, hopes, fears, and dreams, right? So how open are we talking about, our emotions and whatever's going on with us? Do you feel and express, fondness and affection? And is there equal and fairness in the relationship? So again, some key principles of what makes a relationship. And so next we're going to talk about, what are healthy relationships? And again, this is something that perhaps you already are aware of. However, sometimes we are in situations, right, or there's specific relationships that perhaps don't align with our values or don't align with the person that we are. But for some reason, we find ourselves in these situations. So it's important, to be able to assess how is that relationship going and whether, the relationship is healthy. And even with just healthy and unhealthy, I don't like to think about it whether it's good or bad. I try to think about it whether it's healthy, unhealthy, whether it's stable or unstable. You'll see even within relationships, right? There's a flow, right? There's growth, right? That there's ebbs and flows. Like there's moments where it is healthy, moments that it's not healthy. There's even an element of like, whether relationships are toxic, right? So just keep that in mind, right? That this isn't a black and white situation, right? Where the healthy relationship is always going to stand as is. It's going to go through its different motions. But mainly the principal key components of a healthy relationship, as you all may know, is, about being honesty, trust, mutual respect, open communication, understanding each other. Even when there's conflict or there's fighting, right? That there's a fair fight, you're understanding each other, and even like anger control, right? Especially when like conflicts do arise, right? How are we managing that anger that comes up? And we want to think about, relationships, right? You want to think about too, it's like what makes it different. The thing about relationship, right? It's two people, right? Two different people coming together. And sometimes that, it takes time for you guys to get to know each other, to balance each other out, to figure out how it is that you guys are going to work out. And relationships are one of the most difficult things to have, especially because, again, we're coming from different backgrounds, different personalities. Yes, there's like similarities here and there depending on who like your partner is, or who that person either you're having that relationship with. There's also, about being, the compromising, right? That there's equalness in the relationship, right? There's no like imbalance of power of who has power and control versus the other. And also in healthy relationships, it's about being able to make your own decisions without feeling like fearful or that there's going to be some kind of retaliation. Okay. When we think of healthy relationships, right now I describe the ones with someone. I also want you to think about the relationships that you have with yourself, which I feel is the most important relationship to start with, in which you really have to look at where you're at in terms of your emotions, your mental, emotional, physical well-being, and how that's being presented in your relationships. So it's a twofold thing, right? Where you want to not just think about like what is the other person doing for you, but it's also about what you are, how you are, what are you doing, what are you bringing, to the relationship. And so this next gets me to move into thinking about, right, when we want to talk about relationships, is whether our needs are being met, right? Whether you feel connected with yourself, whether you understand yourself, whether you know what triggers you, how you react, right? And also understanding your needs. What are your needs, right? And knowing what your needs are and how to get them met, it's going to be really important in figuring out how the relationship is going to unfold. Also being able to understand, right, that the other person, right, also has their needs as well. So it's about figuring out how this balance of how can I make sure that my needs are being met and also that I'm meeting the needs of the other person. Right. And that's, again, what makes relationships really difficult. And it's a balance that, you want to do in terms of sometimes perhaps, it's going to be about you meeting the needs of the other person, and your needs perhaps may have to, be kind of not put to the side, but just kind of put on pause. And then there's going to be moments, right, where it's going to be the other way around. So it's really assessing the flow of the relationship and what is needed at the moment. But one key thing to ask yourself is, how are you connecting with yourself, and are your needs being met with yourself and with the other person? And also, at any point as I'm going through the presentation, please ask any questions. I'm hoping that you also use the chat to be able to write any feedback, any comments, any questions that you may have as I'm sharing the information. So again, two key things is understanding what your needs are, right? And then how to meet the needs of others. And in order for you to do that, right, first it has to do the inward work of figuring out the relationship that you have with yourself. And that could be a whole nother topic that I can talk about. But for today, it's just kind of bringing that awareness, right, that it's the relationship with ourselves and the relationship that we have with others. And so in order to build, healthy relationships, now that we have an idea of what the healthy relationship looks like, right, a huge part of that is communication, right? How are we communicating? How are we getting our needs met? How are we letting know others what it is that we need, right? So again, first is figuring out what your needs are. Then it's figuring out, like, how do I communicate those needs? And it's not just about what your need is, but it's also how you communicate it, right? So communication is understanding the emotion and the intentions behind the information, right? It's about clearly conveying the message. It's about listening in the way that gains the full meaning of what's being said, but also makes the other person to feel heard and understood. Okay, so here I listed a few different communication skills, right? Actively listening, right? How is it that we're paying attention? Are we making eye contact? What is our body language? Are we, able to repeat what the other person is sharing with us? Do we stop and think about our actions, about how we express ourselves, right? Usually when there's emotions, right, we can be very reactive. And so sometimes, we may say things that we don't mean, and that may create a whole nother, it may create conflict. So being able to like stop and think, at any point asking for any clarification, right? If there's something you didn't understand or doesn't make sense to you, being able to ask like, hey, like, what did you mean by that? Can you help me understand that? Learning how to compromise, right? This is a huge one, right? Like, how do we compromise? Like, again, this is about your needs being met. So in this situation, how can we compromise? Like, whose needs are going to be prioritized in that moment? And the last one here, the I statements, which I think it's a really powerful and effective way to communicate and also be able to take ownership of your emotions, is by using I statements where you start your sentence with the I, right? I need, I want, I feel. Typically, when we communicate in a way where you're directed at the person with, well, you did this and you did that. Well, look what you're doing there, right? The you, that creates an opportunity for there to be tension, for the other person to get defensive, right? So with these I statements is again taking ownership of your emotion, but also being able to avoid any conflict that may come. And so, an easy statement that I love to share is this like sentence here, where you just pretty much you just fill in the different parts. So, I feel, and then you plug in the emotion. So, think of a situation. Even right now, you can think of a situation, maybe something that happened today, something that happened within the week, something that caused an emotion, right? So, think about what that emotion is, right? And then when you say I feel, you plug in that emotion, right? So then in this next part, you think about what did the other person do? What is it about what they did? How did that impact you? Right? What was the behavior that happened that impacted you? Right? Because, right? Oops, I kind of got ahead of myself. Sorry. So first is so you describe the behavior. What is it that they did? And then you describe why that behavior impacted you. And then at the end, you end it with sharing your needs and your wants, right? I need you to X, Y, and Z. So an example of this can be, so let's say, usually with my therapy clients, right? I do have a strict policy about being on time, especially because, we only have 50 minutes in a session and there's so much to talk about. We only see each other once a week. So it does frustrate me when clients do not arrive on time, especially if it's like 5, 10 minutes. And I know, with us Latinos, right, we're always late. Um, However, right, a way that I communicate things to my clients, right, instead of saying like, there you are, you're late again, why are you late, right, that judgment, that criticism, I stop and I think, I'm like, hey, so-and-so, I just want to say that I feel frustrated when you arrive late to my sessions, because I value the time that we have together. And I want to make sure that you get everything that you need from today's session. So what I would like you to do is to work on being on time for the next session, right? So again, I feel, you plug in the emotion. You don't have to use this entire statement. However, I like to try to use it as much as I can, because doing this, again, it's going to alleviate, again, them getting defensive. They're going to reciprocate what it is that you're communicating with them. All right. So let me just check the chat and kind of see where we're at. I see. Let's see. Ooh. Okay. So I'm gonna put Alejandra right here on the spotlight. So I like the reframe: not good or bad, but healthy or not healthy, and over time, which side has it leaned towards? Absolutely. And then it reminded me of the nonviolent communication model. Oh yes, absolutely. And if Alejandra, you're more than welcome in the chat if you want to share a little bit more about what that is. I'm sure everyone will appreciate that as well. Thank you for your feedback. Oh, let me this. All right. So moving along. So next, right, so we talked about communication, right? And again, there's so much more to talk about communication. However, my time is limited here. Next, we're going to talk about boundaries, right? Another juicy favorite topic that I have because boundaries is one of the most difficult things to do, yet one of the most essential things to do because boundaries are a way that it helps protect ourselves, right? It protects our time, our energy, our well-being, right? So boundaries are the limits and rules, right, that we set for ourselves, right? We have to remember about ourselves as well. This is where it starts first, set boundaries with ourselves and also set boundaries with others, right, in our relationships. And like I said, relationships can be any kind of relationship, right? And so these boundaries, define what behaviors are acceptable and unacceptable, right? What are we willing to tolerate and what can we do for them? Right. So the boundaries could be pretty much about a lot of different things, which get into the different types of boundaries. But when we think about boundaries, right, the way that we decide what kind of boundaries we need to make, and we have to think about what our values are. What do we value? What's important to us, right? Um, and so once you understand what it is that's important to you, you're going to be able to figure out like, okay, this is a boundary I need with this person, right? And I will say something that comes up a lot is that boundaries with our families, especially our parents. And I'm telling you, as a first gen, as my family, who are, came from Mexico, me assimilating all the cultural aspects, right? The different traditional, right, values and traditions, all of that, right, makes it so much difficult to make these boundaries because it makes us feel bad. Because there's guilt, there's shame, there's so much that comes around it with making boundaries, specifically, with our family. Especially, we think about just the different ways that we grew up, right? The beliefs, right? That first of all, as women, right, as Latinas, we are to serve others, right? We put others first. As Latinas, right, we are caretakers, right? So just being a Latina, a woman already has its own, its own heaviness that it comes with, and expectations, roles and expectations. Um, but then when we think about too in our culture, right, the way it is that we're also brought up in terms of like, families, everything, that we respect our elders, right, that we do what our parents says, right. And here we are, like first gens, like breaking the cycles and trying to break the patterns and whatnot. That boundaries can be a really difficult to do. So I just wanted to say that and acknowledge that. If anyone else out there feels the same way, that setting boundaries, with their families, whether it's their parents or siblings, is difficult. Please let me know that this resonates with you as well. So the different types of boundaries are as is. So first we have, we have physical, sexual, emotional, time. So I'm trying to move this little thing here. 1 second. So yes, so physical, sexual, emotional, time, material, intellectual. And so physical has to do, right, with our space, right? Also has to do, with our body, right? What is the distance that we feel is comfortable? Sexual, right? Also having to do like with our body, like what are we okay with and not okay, especially, when we are in a romantic relationship, but even when we're meeting somebody, right? Do we prefer like a handshake, a hug, someone leaning in for a kiss, right? Or even when you're like relationships, right? In terms of like what sexual activities you're comfortable in doing or not. Emotional, right? How do we protect our emotions, right? What is it that people do that either take advantage of our niceness, right? I myself am a people pleaser, so I am one to always say yes, yes, yes. However, that's at the cost of my own well-being because then I'm doing things for others and I'm not protecting myself, right? I'm doing things because no quiero quedar mal, or because what are they going to say, or because, believe it or not, there are people that make you feel bad about setting boundaries or about taking care of your emotions. Time, right? How do you value your time? How are you spending your time, right? What are you saying yes to? What are you saying no to? This could be, whether it's, people inviting you somewhere. This could be, things at work, right? Like, are you leaving on time, right? Are you leaving late? How is someone, is someone constantly asking you like, hey, I need this, I need that. Material, right? This has to do with your materialistic things like money, your possessions, right? If someone is asking you for money, if someone is asking you, to let them borrow your car, things like that. And then we have intellectual, right? That we all have our own opinions, perspectives, interpretations, right? And so how do we respect each other's opinions, right? Like if there is something that we don't agree with, right? Like how do we set that boundary? If there's someone that is not respecting your viewpoint or the way you feel, think about something, how do you let them know? So this is, and there's like a few other ones, but these are like the main ones that typically like boundaries are based around. And again, this could be a whole different presentation as well. This is just kind of just to let you know the different types. And so even thinking about, for you, what area do you feel that perhaps you struggle with, right? Which area do you feel perhaps that you can improve on or work on, making more boundaries? And so the way that you set boundaries, right, it's being really clear and specific. So first identifying like what is your need? What is it that you want in the situation, right? And be able to state that, to state what you need and want, and also being able to say no, right? So I want, you to X, Y, and Z. I need you to X, Y, and Z. I expect you to next time, right? So these are just like phrases to begin with when you're thinking about what those boundaries are. And like I mentioned, setting boundaries and also maintaining them. A lot of discomfort comes from it because it's really, really uncomfortable, again, to set these boundaries because of the way that people react, right? And the way that we're conditioned as well in terms of our culture, upbringing, even just thinking about, our professions, right? Thinking about, where is it that perhaps we can have boundaries in terms of like, are you taking on too many tasks? Are you, staying late at work all the time, right? If there's a conflict at work, right? Are you expressing how it made you feel, right? And so part of this, when you set boundaries, is also acknowledging that there is going to be discomfort. That's going to be difficult, that you are going to feel bad. And it's not that, boundaries is ever, you're not going to feel guilty. It's about how do you manage that, right? How do you cope with it when it does come up? And also giving people the time to adjust to your boundaries, especially if they're not used to you making boundaries. Of, let's say you are that people pleaser, they're always saying yes, and all of a sudden you start saying no, they're gonna be like, well, what's wrong with you? Like, how come, you used to say yes all the time, now you're saying no? So giving some room, right, for the other person to also like adjust to then now you are going to be making boundaries. And so here are just examples of, boundaries that you can say, obviously this just depends on so many different like situations, right? I wish I can help, but I can't support you right now. I need time and space to think about this through. Please do not comment on my appearance, weight, etc. Sorry, I can't make it. I can make it this time, next time. No te puedo ayudar con eso, pero conozco a alguien que podrá. And then the last one, which is also my favorite, is no. No is a complete sentence. Punto y estás. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to say why you're saying no. No in itself is a complete sentence. Okay? So I think that's all that I have for you guys. So please, any questions, any comments? What came up for you as you were, going through the different things that I talked about today? What relationships were you thinking about also too when you're going through this? Or even like what types of boundaries you feel you need to work on more. The ones that I see more frequently is the emotional, right? The emotional, the material, which is like the money part. What else? Sometimes even just the intellectual one. So it really just depends on you. And again, you constantly have to like assess where you're at, because there's moments where you probably are strong and are able to say no. And there's times that you're not, and all of that really depends on where you're at mentally and emotionally and what capacity that you're in. All right, so let me go over the chat, see if anyone has any questions. Ooh, Alejandra, you are just on fire here. I love your feedback. Mm, So here's more information on the nonviolent communication, which is a communication framework designed to improve interpersonal relationships and promote empathy, understanding, and communication. It's a whole new way of communicating, and I've been practicing it for years in my relationship, and it makes a big, big difference. I highly recommend the framework for boundaries. There's a book on it, you can Google it, and the author is Marshall B. Rosenberg. Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Alejandra, for just sharing that feedback. And I love this, right? This is what the space is for, right? I may not always have all the answers or all the information, and the fact that you're able to come in and share and and speak up, I absolutely love it and welcome it. So thank you so much, Alejandra, for sharing that. And again, for all of you, just for being here present. I see here also emotional intelligence. Yes, being able to understand, right, our emotions, be able to have awareness of what our emotions are, and then how to express them in a way that's going to be healthy and productive. Let's see. So then we have Mary sharing about her working with paraprofessionals again after a 7-year break. I'm scared of messing it up. I feel like I prioritize being friends over being a fair supervisor. I want to be liked, and how do I address this? Such a great question. So many things to it. First, I want to validate, that thought, right, of wanting to be liked, right. That is the thing that's also limiting you, right, from being able, to set boundaries. And the way the question I like to pose, right, is you not making that boundary, right? You not being that supervisor that you need to be comes at what cost, right? What is it that it's jeopardizing? Is it again your mental health, your emotional health, your ability, to be the supervisor that you need to be? Perhaps it's affecting like the work, right? So thinking about it's at what cost. And when you start recognizing at what cost and looking at deeper of like, why is it that I'm having trouble in setting this boundary? That gives you information to be able to work through that. And part of that too is, shifting our mindset, right? Reframing, right? Our belief system, right? Because a lot of this has to do with our belief system too, in terms of like, you know, how are we going to perceive, right? Because of our, we want to be liked from everyone, our reputation. And so really is uncovering, right, and learning and having awareness of what beliefs are coming up when you set that boundary. And like I said, it's really, really common, especially as a people pleaser, or even just, para quedar bien, or, to be liked, or, to maintain relationships, right? It's all very, very, very valid. But what we have to start thinking about is what we're doing, right? It's coming at what cost, right? People pleasing, or always saying yes, or having people take advantage of, right? What is that a cost of? And also, when you think about boundaries, right? It's not about that, you know, it's an and, right? Like, especially, that you can also, stay true to what you believe in and get what you need, right? And not always is the person going to respond or react in the way that you want them to, but then that part is then on you to sit with that. And the thing with boundaries is, in the short term, right, when you say yes or just do what the other person wants you to do in the short term, it gives you some, like, some satisfaction, it eases you, but in the long term it's actually hurting you, because that same pattern of behavior is continuing to happen over and over again. And just like anything, boundaries, it's a muscle. It's a muscle that we have to build, and we have to keep on practicing, no matter like how uncomfortable. And if that person is absolutely not respecting your boundaries, then you may want to reevaluate that relationship and see, and if that relationship is serving you, because we can also outgrow relationships at any time. Awesome. Any other questions? Let's see. So, okay, another question. Let's see. What's everyone's best practice or tips on self care when we find our boundaries are not being respected? How do you get back to a place of inner peace to limit anxiety, stress when encountering such incidents? And again, anyone here, if there's something that works for you, please let's also share. You guys are all knowledgeable and have your own wisdom as well. Um, but when I think of, self-care too is a whole nother like topic. But with self-care, right, there's also different areas of self-care. Self-care has to do with our physical, our emotional, our mental, our spiritual, our professional, our personal, right? So those are different areas I like to break self-care. And so when we think about boundaries, right, we have to think about what area, right, what type of boundaries being violated, right? Who it is that is violating that relationship. And like I said, there's different choices, right? You can continue practicing that boundary and being firm about, okay, this is what I need, this is what I need, right? And of course, that is then going to bring, some emotion. So different ways, again, to self-care, take care of you, depending on what it is that you need. It's figuring out like what are things that soothe you, what are things that calm you, right? These are doing physical things to your body, whether it's going for a walk, journaling, practicing gratitude. This could be, exercise. This could be you lighting candles, right? So anything that you feel that like soothes you. Another part is like your thought process, right? Reframing your thoughts, encouraging, being positive, right? And if ultimately this person is just not respecting or keeps on violating your boundaries, um, you may want to reevaluate the relationship. And if perhaps, especially if it's like a working relationship, like if you're at work, of course, like maybe you have to see this coworker or this boss again and whatnot. But it's just about figuring out like what you need to do to protect yourself and protect your sanity, your time, right? And so really doing like every day, having to do these like practices, not just when something happens when you're in like the reaction, but every day, figuring out ways that you can calm your body, things you can do to calm your mind. Um, let's see if anyone else gave any like suggestions. So Alejandra again, I was thinking about boundaries when developing new friends as an adult. I've had to learn how to place boundaries because I started feeling undervalued or like I was putting way more effort than others and it was leading towards resentment. Instead of staying quiet and blaming, I started to place boundaries and it was hard, but it helped me filter who would be a better fit to build relationships. Yes, absolutely, Alejandra. Love, love, love that. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, so I'm super loving the conversation that is going on right now. I know that the questions that you're asking are not simple answers. It's a multi-layered thing where you have to start acknowledging, right, your emotions, what is being triggered. And the thing with our emotions, right, it's about, there's like our physical reactions, right? Our body is reacting, but also like our thoughts, right? And so when we think of like regulating ourselves, we have to regulate our body and then we have to also regulate our mind, right? So it's like a two-step thing. And so Lorena, what I suggest, is thinking about, creating a plan for yourself in terms of like, what are some things that whether you've done in the past, whether or new things that you can try to take care of yourself in those different areas. So on here on the chat, if you like, I would put the areas of self-care. The areas of self-care. So we have emotional. And I know we're past the 30 minutes, so if anyone has to leave, thank you so much for being here today. Again, I'm here every Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific time. If there's any specific topic that you would love for me to address and cover, please put it in a chat, send me a DM, let me know what that is. So for areas of self-care, emotional, we have personal, we have mental, we have spiritual, we have personal, and we have professional. And there's also financial. A great place to start is um, so a great place to start is going through those different areas and identifying things to take care of that specific thing. Um, and then from there, when you set a boundary or you communicate and you're triggered and emotion comes up, right? Knowing what tools or things you can do, even something as like, taking deep breaths, right? Taking deep breaths, going for a walk, going in nature, a lot of like grounding techniques, visualizing. There's so many things that that we can do, but I would suggest starting there in terms of identifying what things that you're already doing that work for you, and then thinking about new things that you want to do. And if you guys also want me to do a presentation specifically on self-care and going through these different areas, I'd be more than happy to do that as well. Alrighty, well, thank you all again for being here and for participating and for sharing your questions and your feedback. For me, it's always a pleasure. Hope you guys all have a wonderful night. Please feel free to reach out, and I will see you guys all next week. Good night.